All right, welcome back to episode 6 of season 4's After Show. Today I have Ryan, Lucas, and Avalon. If we want to go do a quick round, I know Lucas, Ryan, you've been on an episode this season, but Avalon, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Obviously, you didn't play, so people may not know who you are, and talk a little bit about your role in production and where you are in your life now. Ryan, if you want to start.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Ryan. Yeah, I think I was on like 2 episodes ago. So yeah, I was on season 4. I was a Dove originally, and then I was on the like Dove swap tribe. But yeah, I'm a teacher in Japan. I mean, nothing much has changed in like the past 2 weeks, but oh, I went to Hong Kong actually, and that was really fun. I took like a 5-day vacation, and I just got back from that a few days ago. And so I just woke up. It's like 11 o'clock right now. I'm just in my pajamas and just like chilling. So I'm off that high of like travel. So I don't know, it's been
Awesome.
fun.
Amazing. Lucas.
Yeah, hi. I'm Lucas. I'm currently senior at UCLA. Just got kind of crazy, only a couple months left before I graduate, and that's exciting. And I'll be going to Montana after I graduate for a job. And I was on season 4 with Ryan, and very excited to get into the show.
Yeah. All right, and then Avalon, let's go to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Avalon. You might not know me, but I recently graduated from UCLA back in the spring as a history major. I was a part of UCLA Survivor all 3 years that I was at UCLA. My first year, I was a part of the film team. My second year, I was co head of props and design. So, season 4, the one you're watching now. And season 5, I was co president. And so I've loved Survivor and UCLA Survivor for a very long time. I've since relocated to Santa Cruz, California, where I've been doing consulting work for mostly educational material companies. And also, I go down south often to do in home care. But, now I'm back here up in the woods doing some painting and, happy to relive my Survivor experience.
That's awesome. I like didn't know that's what you were doing. I totally will talk to you about education consulting because I'm so interested in that. See, networking, guys, always be networking. But okay, let's jump into the episode. This is the merge episode. But I want to talk a little bit about what your guys' experiences was like, yeah, like on the swap tribe. In this last episode, right, we kind of see specifically you two like start to connect a little bit, and Lucas, you reaching out more to the doves after you like see that Nia goes home, that the snakes are maybe down in numbers. So now maybe these lines are starting to be blurred a little bit. So before we talk about the merge, I want to talk a little bit about what those relationships were like building on the swap. Either of you.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Um, yeah, the merge was very interesting because even though like we had swapped tribes once, kind of the entire time on the Kukupao tribe where I was, we had won both of the challenges that we had on that tribe. And so our kind of lines and alliances were never really tested on that tribe itself. And I think the game could have turned out very different if there actually had been some more concrete kind of alliances built on that tribe, but it hadn't really been like that. So those kind of initial tribe lines with the snakes and the doves definitely stuck around through the swap and into the merge. And I think you see that at the start of the episode of how strong those tribe lines are. And even as you get towards the end of the episode, where you're seeing that the vote is pretty much along tribe lines with the exception of a single vote. And so there was that interesting dynamic of everyone was trying to reach across the aisle and work with everyone, but at the same time, at the end of the day, everyone kind of went back to those initial tribe lines for voting.
Ryan, do you have a similar perspective? I mean, we definitely see you in this episode reconnecting with your old tribe mates.
Yeah, I don't know, it was funny because when I was on the swap tribe, when I was on Kukupa, I think Lucas can agree to this too, but like we were just I don't know, we had like a good dynamic. Like the 6 of us just kind of like got along as like people pretty like naturally. And I thought that it would materialize into just like some sort of like alliance or like that we'd kind of be working with each other in the future. But what I didn't really like take into consideration was the fact that like our bonds like weren't strengthened by the fact that like we didn't go to like tribal, like we never had to like just talk about that sort of stuff because we kept just winning. So yeah, after, so I see myself, or I went back to like my old like relations with the Doves, just because like I had gone to tribal with them before and I felt more comfortable with it, even though I thought Kukupa was like an option and it's what I wanted to do. I remember as soon as like we got to the merge, and I remember talking about this in my confessional, but like I remember as soon as like the merge happened and we like dropped our buffs and we got like the new merge one, immediately like all of the snakes just kind of like rushed towards each other and we're just like really like happy to just like be like towards each other, and all the doves were like a little more awkward. And so I realized, I'm like, oh, like even though like the swap tribes like happens, like our like allegiances like with like the snakes versus like the doves, like it's just not as strong, and I feel like they're going to stick together as like a unit more. So yeah, I think that's more the reason why I opted to like fall back on the doves, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it last episode a little bit when I was awarding Jude my player of the episode. But a big reason why I felt compelled to do that was because he had voted with a majority of the people left in the game, right? So he'd voted with the Doves, right? You guys had all gone to tribal together, and he'd voted with you, or even not voted with you, which you could argue that like by not voting, that in a way cements even more trust. And then he now has voted with the snakes also, and so he has this like voting rapport with like a majority of the people left in the game. And so yeah, not going to tribal on the swap tribe, you didn't really get to build that rapport with anyone, and you never really know where anyone actually stands until the pen hits the paper, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, I want to talk about the merge and the merge twist, because Avalon, I don't know what we were on. Like when we like having Bella come out and like present this like
I was
fake
I was
disease
laughing.
organization. Like, what were we thinking? Like, that was crazy.
I was laughing so hard because not only was the organization fake, but we only offered to give them $25. I thought that was the hilarious thing. I was like, oh no, they're really gonna get a big loss from that $25 donation we were giving them.
Evil.
That was so funny. I forgot, like, yeah, we really were quite intricate with the way that we planned these twists out this season, where we were like, yeah, if they actually choose to do the right thing, we'll add more money to the prize pot, right? Like that was the real center of it. But yeah, so we see as it plays out, everybody is really agreeable, which I found to be really interesting because it's a pretty stark contrast to what we're seeing on the Nakahi tribe before the swap, right? Where they're like basically killing each other at tribal council, you know what I mean? And now we get to merge and they're like, oh yeah, you can take a ticket. I mean, you guys let Iman go so early in the order, you know what I mean? Like I was a little bit surprised certainly by how easily those decisions were made there.
It kind of
Yeah, I thought,
seemed like,
yeah,
sorry,
go for it.
I would say it kind of seemed like at the time, trying to think back, like it kind of seemed like if you went and took it, that it almost like in a kind of weird way would paint more of a target on yourself, because it would make it seem like to other people that like you're not feeling secure about where you are and you're not very secure in your alliances. And if the fact that you need to take that to like have that security over the next 1 or 2 votes, because I believe the idol's only good for like the next 1 or 2 tribal councils or something like that. Like if you really weren't secure, then maybe that would show the people in your alliance with that like maybe you're not trusting them, or maybe you're looking to make a move, which maybe would make some people inherently kind of distrusting. Like with Iman, for example, if he took it, maybe it wouldn't have given Jude the confidence that Iman was actually with him. And so there's kind of those interesting dynamics kind of in the background of that.
Yeah, I agree. Even though it was like an option that was presented to us, it was like you don't want to like, I don't know, you don't want to take it because you don't want to paint like a target on your back. And like, I don't know, it was just there, but like I don't like, yeah, I don't know. I just it wasn't there like to take. And I feel like if I were to take it, it would have like it would have just come like the like down the line, just the like consequences that would have come just from taking it would have like just like far exceeded just like the momentary like benefits of just like taking like the idol and the scroll. I don't know,
Yeah,
so even though it was an option, like I didn't feel like it was worth it.
it's hard to take something in front of everyone, I think. And you know what I think is really so interesting though is that like had the order been slightly different, had Hannah been last instead of Dunker, and maybe she'd taken it, the whole episode would have been completely different. The whole game would be completely different. Vince would probably be out instead, it's so interesting, I think, how these like small decisions can really have these like massive impacts on the game. But Avalon, I remember being really surprised that no one was taking the idol, because I do think it's really hard to take something like that in front of everyone. But I don't know, if you're coming in from a weird position, I mean, Dunker choosing to take it, honestly, I think almost makes the most sense, because he was in the minority of the vote at the last tribal. He was the only person left who was in the minority vote. So in a way, actually, I do think that is quite logical. But yeah, I just definitely remember being surprised that no one took it earlier. I don't remember or know what your perspective
Yeah,
was.
I mean, personally, I thought that Dunker was in the best position to take it being last. I mean, I would have felt guilty taking it in front of the group, like at all. So, I mean, I know at the end it got down to Elena and to Hannah, but I just would have been uncomfortable taking it in front of them and being like, sorry guys, you guys have to miss the merge feast. Bye. I would have felt
Yeah.
guilty about that too. Like, because those people would have like hated me because they got to miss out on the merge feast. So I thought that was like a bad place to put yourself in.
Yeah, I mean, that's also like a real repercussion. Like the merge feast is like a thing, and so it's not just like, oh, you don't get the clue. It's like, oh, you don't get to go to the merge feast. Yeah, that's definitely adds to the stakes. Well, okay, let's jump into talking about the immunity challenge a little bit. This is kind of a Survivor UCLA classic where we kind of have some sort of memory order competition. I think I wrote some of those questions actually, and maybe the sequences as well. And I remember trying to be extra devious and like tricky with what we would ask. And did you guys feel like this was your challenge, like, and you were like disappointed in how you did, or were you like not expecting to like make it super far?
Yeah, I was really I thought it was a challenge I could have been good at, and I was disappointed. I think it was like this, I don't remember if it was the second or the third like series that I got out on, but my strategy going into it was just remember like the first like letter of everything that appears. So if it's like, I don't know, like dove, then idol, snake, like DIS. And so I can just continue to like keep like memorizing and memorizing like a lot of information. Um, but I remember the one I got out on, it was Bruin versus Blender, and I just put B for both of them. And I wasn't paying attention to what it was at all. I was just hearing the first letter. And then when it was like, oh, which like Bruin or Blender appeared exactly twice. I'm like, fuck, they're both B's. I'm like, so it was a 50-50 shot because I had no idea. I wasn't paying attention to I was just paying attention to the like first letter. So I got it wrong, but in my head, I was still doing it for like all of the other rounds and I got them all right really easily. So I'm like, shit, like it would have, if I had gotten that right, I think I could have gone and like probably won because like the other rounds just with that strategy was really easy.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I've never heard of that strategy because, I mean, memory comps like this are like relatively common, I would say. And, different people have different strategies. Sometimes, like, I've done it where, like, you have to write on a note card, like, each of the things, whatever, and then you're able to, like, lay them out in front of you on a table. And so when I would do it, I would, like, create, like, a visual pattern, was kind of how I do it sometimes. Or, yeah, just trying to, like, make a rhythm, a song, whatever. But yeah, the first letter thing, that's definitely interesting. I'll have to try. I mean, it was apparently maybe half effective according to your after elimination tactics to be effective. But what about you, Lucas? What was your experience with that challenge?
Yeah, going in, to be honest, I wasn't the most confident. Normally, like with myself, I kind of have like a really strong like long-term memory, and it takes me just a little bit to like look at stuff and digest it. And I can digest like a large amount of information, but I need a little bit of time with it, and then I'll like remember it forever. So if memorizing like a speech or something like that, it's a great ability. But when it's really fast and it's once through and that's it, it's normally not great. And also didn't have a great strategy of I was trying to remember like the whole word in a sequence and just repeating the sequence. And I think it's in whatever round I got out on. I was watching myself during the video and I see myself going and I see myself like think up like, oh wait, I forgot one. And then the next came, and then instantly I was like, oh, I'm toast. Like
It's just over
everything
at that
went.
point. Yeah.
And but actually, funny enough, Ryan was mentioning the first letter because I was watching it back. I was like, I should have been able to do well in that challenge because but I didn't have the right strategy going into it. So I actually did the same thing as Ryan with the first letter as I was watching back this video, and I think I got every single route right. So
Yeah,
I
no,
was thinking like with a combination of the nerves of just being there and also like not having the right strategy. I mean, it was a direct line to losing. So kind of interesting that I'm sure the strategies the winners used were probably match something closer to that. And it's pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the nerves definitely play a role. You know, it's definitely a factor when you're in the moment. Like, it's definitely an added like pressure because like, yeah, it's like Survivor, whatever, but there is like a level of like stakes, right, when you're actually doing it. But what I actually really like, and this is a nod to Karina, our editor, is like how you were really able to play along with this challenge as a viewer, which I thought was like really engaging. Like you were saying, as you were watching it back, you were kind of like doing it again. And I think that's really cool as a viewer to be able to like have that experience of like, how would I do, you know? And again, you take away the nerves when you're sitting on your couch, as Jeff loves to talk about. But yeah, no, definitely a different dynamic, and a really interesting challenge. I'm curious to see. Maybe I'll have to ask Elena what her strategy was at the time. But yeah, Avalon, do you know like how you would have maybe approached the challenge if you'd been in their
Well,
shoes?
I did play along today, and I definitely would have lost because I was like trying to create a mind palace, and that did not work out very well in my own head. And also, I mean, the only thing I kind of remember about this challenge was like I was really happy from a props perspective, where like the only thing I had to do was print out pieces of paper. So, you know, it just was like happily remembering the little amount of work I had to do for this challenge.
Yeah, no, I mean the symbols they were cute though. I was like, "Aw." Yeah, no, they were good ones. We were creative and we brought back, you know, the blender, right? Homage to the eating challenge from
Oh,
earlier that
yeah.
season.
Dramatic.
oh, okay. I'm not gonna lie. I just figured that out. I didn't realize why you guys had a blender.
Why
I
is
was like,
there a
why is there?
blender there?
Yeah, I was kind
Yeah,
of confused to be honest.
I actually still have the symbols as like a memento for because I kept
you
using just
do.
like, random shit from throughout the season, and that's like one of the things that I still kept is back home.
That's
Why do you
great.
have
I
this
love
random
that.
picture of a blender in your room, Ryan?
No, I could explain. I could explain.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's jump into the strategy of the round because honestly, I thought that this strategy session was super interesting. Because we're watching a lot of people interact for the first time. We're watching a lot of people reunite. We have idols and fake idol dynamics and like clues and like all these things going on. And we really start to see some of the relationships start to blossom and the dynamics start to blossom that really have like impacts on the rest of the season. So Ryan, I want to start with you and talk about this whole Elena having the idol situation. You know, she kind of comes forward with that a little bit. And then you guys go and you find a fake idol together, but none of you know it's fake. How quickly were you able to like piece together that Dunker probably had the real thing?
Um, I think it was always a sneaking suspicion that he had the real thing. I'm trying to remember because like it was the most obvious. I don't know. It was the most obvious like conclusion that like Duncan or Dunker had the real one, and it was just like a fake idol. Like we knew it was fake just because it. I mean, no offense, it just didn't look like great. Um, so, but there was other like possibilities that like I was entertaining that like it could be just like other people because I knew it was likely that like there could have been like multiple clues like in circulation, and so somebody else in like the like tribal or in the merge feast could have like gotten like a similar clue, and it could be somebody else's. So I was actually thinking it was one of the snakes that like had it because they like obviously like arrived first to the feast, and like oh if there were like two planted at like the same exact time, it makes sense that like somebody else could have gotten it, but like I don't know. So even though like I was entertaining that like possibility, it was just I think Elena had said it in the episode actually. It was just it's weird for like just such like a stupid and just like weird lie to someone who like you're kind of just like close with. Like I feel like he would have gained nothing from like just like lying because it would have been pretty obvious. So in like a weird way, it kind of confused all of us because it was such a weird lie that like we're like he can't possibly be thinking like it's such a bad like thing to do because it has like no it's super risky for like not a ton of reward um, but ironically,
To the point that it made it believable that that wasn't the reality.
yeah, Dunker was like
Maybe.
Dunker was hard to read sometimes. Just as like everyone else, I can kind of just like suss out and just like understand. But like he was always kind of just like a wild card, and it was like weird to just have like conversations and like he was weird to suss out. But I remember, I think somebody showed it in the video, or somebody was talking about it, but it had a ribbon with a like chocolate company on it. And so I remember I looked up the chocolate company, and it's not everywhere. It's mostly in Southern California. So I'm like, okay, the person who like this like fake idol it is, they probably live in like SoCal. So that narrowed it down to like even more people. And Dunker was one of them. And some of the other snakes, I was like, I mean, that was half the people on, so it didn't really narrow it down. But I'm like, okay, so that's like not I don't know. So I'm like, the person probably lives in Southern California. So I'm like, okay, that narrows it down to like these people, probably not these people. So I just thought it was funny.
No, that is funny. That's so interesting. And then we also have this dynamic where Elena shares her idol with you. Was there any amount of like betrayal? Because she took the clue on the first day. It was her, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think at first, yeah, there definitely was like some sort of, oh, I can't believe she didn't tell me, like betrayal, like blah blah blah. I honestly thought that she would have told like me or Hannah like earlier. But I mean, I remember like thinking like after a while, like I understand that like because the doves are very much like, oh, who has like the like clue, or sorry, who took the clue, like who has the idol, like come forward. And so I understand why she like kept it secret for so long, just because like it was like a hot topic for like such a long time. But yeah, I was a little like shocked that like we learned about it like so much later on. So yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And Lucas, I want to jump to you because I mean, I think in this episode, I really perceived you to kind of be at the social center of a lot of what was going on. Because you know, you have this relationship with Vince, and then you're also hearing that Annika wants to go after Vince now, and then you're also like building this connection with Jude, and you're learning what happened on the Nakahi tribe, and like, you know, you really are like kind of hearing all of these stories. And so yeah, I'm curious what your perspective was at this tribal because there were a lot of moving pieces around you know, who was going to be the target and like who everyone wanted to work with and all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much to break down with this vote, even though it ended up seemingly in such like a uniform kind of manner along tribe lines. There was so much going into it, especially just coming straight into the merge. And I knew basically as soon as we merged, I knew that, you know, at some point alliances don't last. There's gonna be some inherent distrust, paranoia at some point that's gonna happen. So even though I had pre-existing relationships with Vince and with some of the other people in the Snake tribe, it was also like trying to initially forge those connections on the Dove side to eventually hopefully create some form of alliance that's neither Snake nor Dove, but it's just a governing strong alliance and something that can take over the game, hopefully later into the game. Um, and so especially you see me reaching out to Jude and trying to like kind of understand him and understand where he's coming from. I think I talked to Ryan at least once that episode. I try to talk to basically everyone and just get to know what everyone's doing. And even from the start, right after the merge challenge, the first thing I did was try to insert myself into the group with all the dubs, with Jude talking about what happened on the tribe, and then with, you know, Elena, Ryan's there, Hannah's there, and try to hear all that stuff. So then I can take it back to the snakes and hear, okay, what happened really? And I can kind of compare the two and see who's thinking what. And like you said, I just try to put myself at the center. Of everything social that was happening. And sorry, I know it's a long tangent, but the only thing to wrap up was something I learned in this episode that I didn't actually really experience while I was there, which how close Vince was to getting axed, basically. Because everyone knew I was a little close with Vince. And so it definitely, people avoided telling me that because that could have been easily a vote that they could have lost if they brought that up to me.
Mm, yeah, I mean, we see Vince in the voting booth, and I think he literally said, like, I'm literally shitting myself right now. Like, I think that was what he said as he voted. Which, yeah, I mean, it was interesting. And, you know, there's this whole segment that we get between where like Elena kind of confronts Jude and is like, hey, so we've been told you're flipping, and he kind of has to be like, no, what do you mean? You know, and I think Iman talks about it very like very eloquently, where he kind of says that like the strategic side of Jude has been woken up, you know, and we really start to see him you know, thinking about the way that he's playing. And Avalon, I know you did his confessionals for a good chunk of the season, and so you definitely got a close up of that lens. But yeah, I'm curious like what like what your perspective was on this tribal, because yeah, there really were a lot of moving pieces, and honestly, like while Lucas was kind of at the social center, I think Jude was a big decision maker here overall. Did she freeze?
Oh,
Oh, she's back.
Is she? She's frozen for me.
she's not moving.
Well,
She's moving
I
on my screen.
remembered
Oh,
like
okay.
question. Okay, I did hear the question.
Okay, yeah, you're back.
I remember doing Jude's confessional where he basically explained like why he wanted to vote the way he did, and I think clearly you can mark it down to like pagong, like the concern of like getting voted off like one by one by one. And I think that Jude kind of saw himself at the bottom of the totem pole on the Dove tribe. And I think that that kind of was an accurate assumption to say that like, oh, I'm not as close to my fellow doves as they are to each other. And so like as if they picked up all the snakes, I could see that he could see himself in a precarious position. So I mean, obviously as the swing vote, he had a lot of control in this vote. I mean, I remember him saying, like, oh, guys, I only voted this way. I only swung last time because it was personal. But I think it's very clear that Jude had strategic things in mind when he was deciding to swing over to the snakes, and consider basically making another tough decision and uh, basically backstabbing the doves again.
I think we got the end of that.
Is it just my audio or is it everyone else too?
No, I think she's a little edited out. But
Very cool.
yeah. No, I think you're right though. Yeah, no, it was super interesting, and yeah, it definitely was like very intentional. I mean, I think he learned a lot this vote, also about like how much he can tell Matthew, and like yeah, just kind of what his role was in this tribe. The start of the episode also was just so funny. Like we were kind of talking about it before we started recording, where Jude's like, oh, I might be dumb, but I made it longer than you. And he's like totally taunting Kelsey, which I think is awesome. I hope we get to, I don't know if they've watched it yet, but I hope I get to watch them watch that moment together if they haven't already. But
I'm
what were you gonna say, Ryan?
Oh no, I just remember the first, because the first minute of like the video is just Jude and he's like going on his spiel about just like random shit. I'm like, are you pompous little prick? I hate you.
Yeah, it's awesome. No, I think it's phenomenal. I was saying this, I think, on last episode of the Aftershow too. Like, I think Jude is the person who, up to this point in the season, has the biggest like evolution of character, whereas a lot of people still are kind of like as they are. You could make an argument for Elena as well, where you kind of start to see her like be a little bit more bold, like we see right off the bat that she takes the clue, and she confronts Jude here, and so she's also being a little bit bold. But Jude, like Lucas, I think you said villain arc was like the phrase you used. I think that's like really what we're seeing. Like Jude's kind of in his villain era, heavily influenced by Iman and Annika, but I think it's great.
There's
But
actually,
yeah, no, so go for it.
sorry, before there's more about just like the Hannah vote that I want to talk about that I feel like from the Dove's perspective just didn't really make the cut.
Yeah, please.
All right. And it kind of has like, I have a question for Lucas, being like from the like snake tribe, to see like if different stuff had played out, if he would like, I don't know, I'll just start talking. So I remember with like the like the Hannah vote. So I met with Vince once. And that was, I think Elena was talking about it in the video where we were told maybe like vote Annika. She has an idol. She's like a good player. She's like, she knows her Survivor stuff really well. So she's like a really big threat. And that was also the same meeting that we learned that Jude and Matthew were like potentially flipping. And so the like we had like learned like both of those things, and with like the whole Jude bomb kind of just like being dropped on us, the both of us had agreed to kind of like suss Jude out and decide on what really happened. And I was really honestly just because I was more inclined to believe that Jude like was going to flip, because I just didn't like trust him. I never like really trusted him like too much like since the beginning. So I was more inclined to believe that he actually was flipping. It would just like have like made more sense. And so I think Dunker in the episode was talking about how he like had met to like vote off Iman, and so that was the like plan originally. And then we learned about like Jude flipping, and then Elena had met with Jude first after we had agreed. Okay, like we heard Vince out, let's hear Jude out, and like let's decide afterwards. And so I think it makes it in the episode. But Elena's like, oh, like we were told that like you were flipping, and like yeah, it's just like crazy, right? And so she kind of like tells like Jude kind of like updates him, and then Jude's like, oh, lying, lying, lying. And so after that, Jude makes Elena call me and says, oh, like I like talked to Jude. I kind of like let him know like what happened. But like we like can trust him, like he's fine, like he's not flipping, like he's not, it's too crazy of like a thing to happen. And I'm like, like uh, okay, I'm like, I'm fine. Like, if like, it's probably fine. Like, Jude will talk to me. Like, I'll see the same thing. And I remember I met with Jude one on one, and he explained everything. Just kind of like, oh, I wasn't. I know he explained everything to me. I'm like, oh, I don't like, I don't know. I just like he was good, and the explanation made sense. But like part of my gut was just like, I don't like trust it. It feels like something just felt wrong, and I still didn't really. I just thought he was like good at like ad libbing and just like lying, and he was just like a good actor. And so the one thing that, and I also would like didn't make the videos. I met with Matthew one on one because I wanted to talk to him because he was also like suspected to like have flipped and like vote with the snakes. So I met with Matthew and I asked him just, are you not even like, are you like planning to flip, but have people been approaching you? Because there's been a lot of things that have been said. And if people have been approaching you and like snakes have been approaching you and telling you to like flip, it makes me more inclined to believe other stuff that's been happening and said about other people. And I thought that was like a fair like thing, but he said no, nobody had ever been approaching him, blah blah blah, and that like it was all false. Um, and so after he said that, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll just like vote with it because I feel like he had no reason to lie. But if he had said people have been approaching me, even if he had lied and said like, oh, I'm not thinking about flipping, but people had like been approaching me and snakes want me to like flip, I think I would have like just I think I probably would have pushed to vote Jude instead. And so that leads me to Lucas. If we were voting Jude, what like would, because that was like my decision maker or my decision to just vote Vince instead. But like if we had been voting Jude, I think it would have changed just stuff from like the season if Matthew had not lied and just kind of was honest and said, yeah, people were approaching me.
Interesting.
If you so like if you, Elena, Hannah were like voting Jude basically.
Yeah.
Ooh, there's a good chance I would have gone for it, but I think for me, Vince also would have had to been on board with it. Because at that point, especially like this round, I was still very tight with Vince. And although I was like definitely making sure I had my options, I was still definitely like kind of at a core with him as far as trying to work with him. And I also wouldn't want to be like the soul snake going to a dove side. Just because long term I didn't want to get stuck in a situation where I stick myself on the bottom of an alliance, basically. But if there's like Vince was with me in that round, you're going Jude, I think there's a good chance I would have done it. And especially because for my perspective on the snake side, when it came to the voting, especially for me, I wasn't like a determining factor in this vote necessarily. Basically, all I had to go on off this vote was the fact that, okay, Jude, Annika, and Iman, especially Annika, saying Jude is locked in, Jude's with us, and he's going to vote. And that was the trust I had to rely on from her word saying that he was with us. But I didn't really have an assurance necessarily that he was going to stick with us. I didn't know going into the vote whether he's going to flip or not. So I just kind of had to trust that going into this vote. And so if there's an option that would have gotten rid of kind of that wild card, there's a possibility would have happened. I don't know if it's a guarantee, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I think. Oh, sorry, Ryan. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry, but yeah, it just, I don't know. I feel like it didn't make it into the episode too much, but it wasn't as clear cut as like, oh, like we're all the doves are 100% voting like this. There was like more moving pieces and just more like stuff that was just like happening. Like it wasn't a clear cut decision. Like, oh, like we're doing this. There was definitely more like paranoia and like uncertainty about like who to believe and like who to vote.
Yeah, I think like what's interesting, right? And we get the episode title from this also is that like Hannah, right, is the Dove purist, as Lucas calls her allegedly, where like there's this idea that Hannah is like keeping the gloves, wow, the doves glued together. And I think we see that honestly, like where like she really is this like center between like with Kelsey gone, right? She's probably one of Elena's closest allies along with Ryan, right? And we kind of have this like core of the doves. And without Hannah, right, you kind of dismantle that at least a little bit, right? Whereas Jude already has this idea where he's on the bottom. He's already flipped a little bit. So he's not as ingrained in what the doves are like have as their like strength, right? So it depends on like what the snakes or what anybody really is trying to do. And like if Lucas would have factored that in. I think the other thing that's interesting here is by voting Vince also there's this potential for relationship building that also happens because there's this idea that Annika and maybe the other snakes are okay with Vince going home, right? And so like then you're still keeping the door open of like this potential bridge of working together later because it's like, oh well, I know that you're also kind of okay with him going, right? So like if you're not going to be too upset about this, right, like we can go this direction versus like say you go for Iman, like you're going to light Iman and Annika both on fire, right, by going that direction instead. So I definitely think there's something to be said about that. But yeah, before we kind of go into more general perspectives, Avalon, I'm curious if there's anything else that you remember because I know you watched everything, like you watched all the footage all the time. I was wondering if there's anything in your memory that jumps out for you from this episode.
Okay. Well, one thing I want to mention is I thought it was really funny that you invited me to be on this after episode because my urn was stolen in between the first challenge, the immunity challenge, and the vote. The urn was literally stolen, and I was really upset that week because it just went missing, and we had to like find a new urn in like a day. And that's just part of being on props. I think was just like kind of working on your toes. And I don't know, Lucas, I watching this episode, I felt like you were a much bigger player in this vote than I had originally thought. I mean, I thought that it was clear that you were kind of like holding the glue together with like um why Jude felt so comfortable voting with the Snake Tribe, because clearly you guys had some kind of like close knit, I don't know, conversation. Because Jude, I mean, had expressed the same thing about Hannah, is that like, oh, no one has talked to her. Iman said the same thing, like no one really knows her. And so, I mean, you kind of like pushed that forward with him and gave him that idea. And so, like, I feel like I watched him the rest of the week kind of move forward with that idea, kind of bouncing off of you.
Yeah, I definitely was one of the probably not the only person who had Hannah as an idea, but I definitely started pushing that a little bit further within the tribe. And even though the final vote kind of came down to me having to trust somebody, Hannah definitely that episode was the one I wanted to go. Because I kind of started talking with Ryan and could sense there was a bit of a connection. And I knew Ryan was close with Elena as well. And so it's kind of like that was like the one link that I hadn't talked to, I hadn't had a connection with, and I didn't really ever see trust building there. So as subtly as I could with, like you said, with Jude or with anyone else, just trying to slowly kind of seep that out is kind of the option that would be best for my game, but hopefully make it sound like it'd be best for everyone as well.
Well, she went home, right? So we'll see how that plays out for you for sure. But yeah, before we jump into player of the episode, every episode, Avalon, I ask what it's like, I mean, being on the show to the players and also what it's like watching it back. So from a production lens, like what is it like, watching it back after having produced it and being like so invested, involved. Fun fact also, this beautiful logo that you see here was drawn by Avalon. And then the other piece that I also always ask is how the show has impacted you in your life and just yeah your thoughts on the world. But yeah, so I'd love to go to you for that before we jump into the player of the episode.
Yes, I will go on my speech. I think that being on production is way more fun than people give it credit for. I mean, one of the things I hate about like watching actual Survivor is that I have to wait like week by week to like know what happens next. But like being a part of production, like I was able to day by day like watch the footage that was uploaded and like see the conversation that was happening, and it felt like I was really immersed in the game, and I knew everybody's secrets at all times. So I knew who had the idol, I knew like who was in alliance of who was lying to who. And so honestly, like by the time we like the tribal rolled around, I could make a pretty educated guess with who I thought was going home, and I thought that was a really fun aspect of the game. I also just really enjoyed like the problem solving mode that I got to put forward, like working on props and like making things like day of sometimes. Um, but I mean, you kind of see how all these small details and decision and like design parts like come to create a whole picture. I mean, watching it back and like seeing it edited is like really a really exciting experience for me because I get to relive it kind of in a nostalgic sense. I was like, oh my God, I was there. I totally remember everything that went behind the scenes for that. I remember laughing my ass off when Dunker came up with that stupid looking like fake idol. I was like, I would have done better than that. But you know, I mean, I just find it a really fun and enjoyable experience of my college experience as a whole. And that's kind of what I got away from it. I got like some like lifelong friends. I got to experience like what it was like to like, I guess, design a reality TV show. And I mean, if anyone has the chance to do so, they should. It's really fun. And I don't know. It's just one of my favorite memories of being in college, and it's the one club I joined like just for fun. And I guess watching it back now, I just am reliving all the memories of how fun it was to, I guess, experience producing it and also experience just like watching the players play.
Yeah, no, it's by far one of my favorite things that I've done, and I'm excited to continue to watch seasons back in the future, and just like, yeah, continue to watch this community grow. But I want to jump now into player of the episode as we start to wrap up here. And I have a running tally, so I can give you all my tally here. So okay, episode 1, it was 3 for Iman, 1 for Lucas. Episode 2, it was 2 for Jude, 1 for Elena, 1 for Kelsey. Episode 3 was 3 for Nia, 1 for Lucas. Episode 4 was 2 for Annika, 1 for Iman, 1 for Kelsey. And episode 5 was 2 for Jude, 1 for Iman, 1 for Annika. So, does anyone want to go first with their player of the episode for this episode?
I mean, I can go. I think it's a hard choice for me between Lucas and Jude. Lucas, because you went on that like really long confessional, and I was like, oh yeah, speak your truth, King. But I think that I have to end up going with Jude because I think it's very clear that he made a decision in this episode that will impact the rest of the game rather than, as I said earlier, just a pagonging of the Snake tribe. We see a much more interesting dynamic in a 5-5 going forward. So shout out to you, Jude, for wanting to make things interesting.
No,
Yeah,
thank you
no,
for the honorable mention. I was when I was coming in when I first heard that you're doing player of the episodes, I didn't expect to hear anything, so I've been pleasantly surprised. So thank you for the honorable mention.
well, the heart react, crazy. Dude is crazy.
But yeah, I think I gotta agree with Avalon. I would also give my player of the episode to Jude as well. I think it takes some balls to do what he did, and he just went for it, and it has really big impacts. And I think it was just the big move of the game that really just starts to transform how the merge ends up playing out. And I think it's a very smart decision in the short run and in the long run. And yeah, I just got to give it to him.
All right, 2 for Jude. Ryan, care to be a contrarian?
No, not today. Yeah, I agree. My player of the episode would obviously just go to Jude. I think that like he was in a really just like highly suspicious spot after like the Kelsey vote. He explained it in a way that like made sense and felt like relatable. Just saying that like, oh, she'd gone after me. She was very scary, highly intelligent competitor, and like anybody would have done it. I think also just with he played off the or like he was kind of like at the like other doves had like stronger connections like with each other than Jude. So like from a dove's perspective, he was kind of like an outlier like at that point. So I think he played his position really well because like when he was talking with Elena, he like convinced her that like he wasn't like voting, and that caused like ripple effects where like Elena called me, and I like had to talk with Jude, and he had to explain. So I think he just played his like hands like extremely well, and he just made it seem, or he made himself seem trustworthy for like one vote. So I think it was like the perfect play to do, and it allowed him to kind of like switch sides. And I think for the short run, it looks like Jude, like the decision, like will fare him pretty well. So I think he played it like almost perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly everyone, and this is bold to say, but I think everyone played really well this episode, to be honest. There's a lot that we see happening, and even for the people who the vote doesn't go their way, like I think we really start to see bonds solidify. Like for you, Ryan, Elena, Hannah, like I mean Hannah leaves, right? But we really see these bonds start to solidify a little bit more. We see Iman and Annika kind of get themselves out of this like hard place that they were in and kind of reintegrate with the rest of their original tribe. Yes, everyone's playing messy and everyone's being crazy, but I think also the fact that Iman didn't end up being the vote after this like hatred that he garnered from the original doves is really interesting. Um, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. You could say like Vince is in a pretty not great spot at this point, just with his name being written down and it sounding like snakes are willing to turn on him. But beyond that, I think everyone definitely had something go their way at least a little bit. This episode, Dunker gets an idol, right? But I am, I think, gonna give my player of the episode here to Lucas. I'll be the contrarian. But yeah, I think like we do really see you at the social center here. Really, and I think like more than anyone else, at least in my perception, we see you building new relationships, which I think is really what the merge is about. And I think credit is definitely due there.
Woo.
Yeah, woo. All right. Well, does anyone have any final thoughts before we wrap up? No.
The
Okay.
only sorry,
Go for it.
I'll be the contrarian again. No, the one thing I just want to like mention is just like when you're playing, just like how like intense it is, like sitting at that tribal council, like going 5 to 6. Like I remember just like watching, because I remember at the time like how nervous I felt, but like watching myself in the video, just seeing my facial expressions on like every vote, you're just like, oh, it's just like so gripping. It's just a crazy experience, and it was awesome to relive that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was close. And, it was really all it took was one person.
Mhm.
And so we definitely see the payoff from the swap and voting together at swap, right? That's the payoff that you get maybe from that voting connection. Well, okay, with that, we'll wrap up here. Thank you guys so much for being here. This was another amazing after show. And to the viewers, I will see you all next Sunday at 8 p.m. Bye.